Right, welcome back, grade 9s. I'm going through the themes, bridging the gap between rich and poor. The Outsiders tells the story of two groups of teenagers whose bitter rivalry stems from socio-economic differences. Socio-economic infers social and economic, money, so that's being an outcast in a society as well as financially an outcast as well. However, Hinton suggests these differences in social class do not necessarily make natural enemies of two groups. The Greasers and Socks share some things in common. Sherry Valance, a Sock, and Ponyboy Curtis, a Greaser, discuss their shared love of literature, popular music, and sunsets, transcending, if only temporary, the divisions that feed the feud between their respective groups. Their harmonious conversation suggests that shared passions can fill in the gap between rich and poor. This potential for agreement marks a bright spot in the novel's gloomy prognosis that the battle between the classes is a long-lasting one. Over the course of the novel, Ponyboy begins to see the pattern of shared experience. He realizes that the hardships that the Greasers and Socks face may take different practical forms, but that the members of both groups and youths everywhere must inevitably come to terms with fear, love, and sorrow. So it's much like if you've ever watched the movie The Breakfast Club. In The Breakfast Club, it tells a tale of these group of people that are to serve detention together, and they come from different class types or different groups within a high school. And when they come together to serve detention together, they realize that they have a lot in common, or they can meet middle ground and become friends. And in that movie, it's a movie and a book as well. The movie, a very interesting movie, yeah, you should really watch it. So they show that in this sort of detention club, a place made to sort of reform them, actually does that. It reforms their views on each other. It reforms their views of what they thought of, like for instance, there's your conventions of the weird kid or the emo kid, the socialite or the it guy or it girl, and your nerd and things like that. And they'll all come together in a safe space, so to say. Ironically, it is a detention room, and so it is an interesting movie, and it much speaks of the relationship that Ponyboy sort of carries here with Sherry, and it speaks of similar things, that what seemingly divides them is meaningless or futile. Right, the next thing, honor among the lawless. The idea of honorable action appears throughout the novel, and it works as an important component of the Greaser behavioral code. Greasers see it as their duty, Ponyboy says, to stand up for each other in the face of enemies and authorities. In particular, we see acts of honorable duty from Dally Winston, a character who is primarily defined by his delinquency and lack of refinement. Ponyboy informs us that once in a shadow of group solidarity, Dally let himself be arrested for a crime that Tubert had committed. Furthermore, when discussing Gone with the Wind, Johnny says that he views Dally as a southern gentleman, as a man with a fixed personal code of behavior. Statements like Johnny's, coupled with the acts of honorable sacrifice throughout the narrative, demonstrate the courtesy and propriety can exist even among the most lawless of social groups. So basically, it's you'd find that you would assume that these people being delinquents would sort of not be honorable and not do the right thing for each other. They'd be thieves to each other, and here we see that there's honor behind thieves, that to each other they won't be vicious, and they'll stand up for each other because they've got no one else to do it for them. It's the sense of community that is built within that, and we see this in this book. The treacherousness of male-female interactions. As hostile and dangerous as the Greaser-Sock rivalry becomes, the boys from each group have the comfort of knowing how their male friends will react to their male enemies. When Randy and Bob approach Ponyboy and Johnny, everyone involved knows to expect a fight of some sort. It is only when the female members of the Sock contingent start to act friendly toward the Greasers that animosities blur and true trouble starts brewing. Even on the greaser side, Soda Pop discovers female unreliability when he finds out that his girlfriend is pregnant with another man's child. With these plot elements, Hinton conveys the idea that cross-gender interaction creates unpredictable results. This message underscores the importance of male bonding in the novel to the creation of unity and structure. So here we sort of see that males sort of have their role to play in society and females have their role to play in society. And with this, they can either build each other up or build a new sense of narrative, like with Sherry and Ponyboy, or they can dismantle a male character's personality. You see this in Soda Pop discovering that his girlfriend is pregnant with another man's child. So it breaks down these different narratives between male duties within a society and female duties within a society, and what happens when those duties are transcended by certain characters, and how that builds our understanding or a deeper analysis into what goes on in the minds of a woman and what could go on in the minds of a man, sort of bridging the gap behind what society would paint as a male's expected role and a woman's expected role, that with a man there would be generally fights or they'd be more violent and tougher, whereas with a woman you would find they'd be more gentle, kind, and very reliable, loyal to their male significant other. And here we don't get that. You get this dismantling of classification from Hinton, and he sort of dismantles our idea of the eternal feminine, as well as, the endless role of a man. So basically, I'll give an example with the eternal feminine. If you've never heard the term, an eternal feminine refers to a woman always being coupled with ideas such as Mother Nature. We are always the kind, nurturing type. And that would be our definition in a patriarchal society, that would be our job, is to be at home, nurturing. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that that's not all a woman is, that we cannot be defined so loosely, and that we also have our own set of values, customs, norms, and we can transcend classifications. The same with men. They don't always have to be associated with bad news, so to say. They can also bring about some, in-depth or intrigue, and we can see that as well with Ponyboy, in that he is significantly different to his counterparts and he thinks in a different way, and that there's nothing wrong with that, in that it's just a possibility that we have this multi-faceted nature of both man's role in society and how it can differ, right? The circle of violence. The violence drives most of the action in The Outsiders. Johnny is deeply scared by a past beating from the Sox. The Greasers and the Sox participate in frequent rumbles, and both Bob and Dally are murdered over the course of the novel. Ponyboy explains that their fights are usually born of a grudge between two people of different social classes, then growing into a full rumble as each side bands together. After Bob's death, Randy tells Ponyboy that he won't show up at the next rumble, explain that it doesn't do any good. The fighting and the killing, it doesn't prove a thing. This incident is one of many moments in the novel when the violent gang members, whether Sox or Greasers, briefly recognize that their fighting is pointless. Violence inevitably results in someone being hurt or killed, which then sparks a cycle of revenge that takes down more gang members. Ponyboy realizes that Sox are just guys after all, but he doesn't try to stop the rumble and even participates in a fight, indicating that his loyalty to the fellow Greasers outweighs his understanding that violence is futile. When Sox later threatened Ponyboy at the grocery store, Ponyboy immediately busts his soda bottle and holds it out as a weapon. Even though a dying Johnny has just told Ponyboy and Dally that fighting is useless, Ponyboy still can't quite shake his role in the cycle of violence, and he continues to react to violence with violence. So it's like sort of changing the way you see things. It's difficult building a different perspective to things in life. It's always a process of reimagining yourself, and by reimagining yourself, you sort of have to kill off old habits, which is not easy. So he's been given this analogy by Johnny that fighting is inevitably futile and useless. And although he agrees with that analogy, it's not something that he can easily consign to. It's something that he has to build off of. He has to reimagine himself in this new convention that has been given to him by Johnny. And in order to do that, he needs to break off old habits, which is difficult, and we can see that he's failing. And I feel like this showing us that he understands the truth behind Johnny's words. However, it is difficult for him to shake his role in the cycle of violence, as they say. It makes him more human, right? He's not this perfect character that has been given this new advice, can immediately change. He sort of needs to rediscover himself, and for me that makes him more human as a person. It humanizes him better, for us as readers, because we can kind of sort of understand where he's coming from, that we all make mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes can enhance us, and teach us things that it's difficult, and in getting past that hurdles, we'll build a new reimagined self, right? So that basically sums up the main themes of the novel.